This video illustrates how you can create a pivot table from external Microsoft Access data. Because Access stores data in related tables, you should first view the companion video, Introduction to Relational Databases, if you aren't already familiar with relational databases. Also, because you can base a pivot table on an Access saved query, you might also want to view the video Introduction to Queries. The obvious way to import Access data is through the From Access button, the leftmost button on the data ribbon. And I will illustrate this method here. However, at least through Excel 2010, this option has limited functionality. It only allows you to import data from a single table or a saved query. If you want to form your own query through Excel tools that is based on multiple tables, you can't do it through the From Access button. Instead, you have two alternatives. First, you can open Access and create a saved table there, so that it can then be imported into Excel. Second, you can form the query with Microsoft Query, available through the From Other Sources drop-down list. I won't cover either of these alternatives here, but two companion videos discuss Microsoft Query in some detail. By the way, the functionality in the From Access button changed in Excel 2013. In this newer version of Excel, there is an option to import multiple related tables into Excel. I think this is one of the better new features in Excel 2013. Importing with the From Access button is quite straightforward. You first choose an Access database file. I will choose the famous Northwind database file that's stored on my desktop. This provides a list of all saved queries, those with the double square icons, and of all tables, those with the single square icons. I can select any one, but only one, of these to import. Note that if I choose a saved query, the query is actually run behind the scenes, and the results are imported. Of course, to know how any of these saved queries are defined, or to know the contents of any of the tables, you would have to open the database in Access. I will choose one of the saved queries. Then it asks whether I want to import the results as a table, or a pivot table or pivot table pivot chart combination. I will choose the Pivot Table Report option and place it on a new worksheet. Now I have a usual pivot table, and I can manipulate it in the usual way. There are two things to realize. First, there is a live link from the Access data to the pivot table. If any changes are made in the data in Access, you can click the Pivot Table Refresh button to show the new data in the pivot table. Second, if you click the Connections button on the data ribbon, not existing connections, but connections, you see that there is a connection in the workbook, and you can click the bottom section to see where it occurs. If you want to remove the connection, you can do so. But then changes in the Access data can't be refreshed in the pivot table. Alternatively, you can click the Properties button to see details about the connection. In particular, the Definition tab shows information that can often be useful. Surprisingly, if I delete the pivot table sheet so that the pivot table and pivot cache no longer exist, the connection is still there. This might be a good time to remove it. In summary, the From Access button is a quick and easy way to base a pivot table on Access data, but at least before Excel 2013, it isn't as useful as it could be.